All right, looks like we are live on YouTube.
That's amazing.
And I'll send a link to everyone uh, here today with the for the YouTube, so you can come back and watch it anytime. There's a new YouTube channel, and I'll share all that information sometime this week. So welcome everybody. It's Monday morning. We are live on YouTube, and we are working on the fourth chapter, believe it or not, from the book The Invocation of Presence. And I'll start sharing my screen here. All right. So we are on page 25 of the book for those people who have the physical copy. And I think uh, we left off last week somewhere in the second or third paragraph of this page. So feel free to jump in on either of those paragraphs and let's continue reading. Any volunteers?
I can read.
Thank
Real knowledge only comes in special states and can be transmitted and understood only in special states, he explained. Handcrafts set the stage for second wind if efforts are made to achieve extreme attention to detail. Just before the second wind of personal annihilation is achieved, a sense of imminent failure will descend upon you like a vulture on an inattentive mouse. This artificial emotional barrier, the sensation of apprehension, is a safety factor. Before we achieve anything serious, we may decide to stop for our own safety, realizing that the body could collapse and die, or worse. And so, certain invocational methods are introduced only at advanced stages in a preparatory work initiated by voluntary initiation and, fortunately for the continued momentum of the organic machine, the second wind of personal annihilation is not easily achieved. This process of voluntarily self-annihilation is known as the 10,000 deaths because each time personal annihilation is almost near, we draw back and the veil invariably falls except for the last time and we must begin again. Shall I continue reading?
Sure.
No objective barrier exists to prevent success, only a subjective barrier to the second wind of personal annihilation about which we will talk again sometime very soon. The second wind of presence is called the non-phenomenal vision, and this vision indicates that the invocation of presence has been attained, at least momentarily. We must be able to easily recognize this state if we are to know whether our efforts at self-invocation and its accompanying sensation of an emotional cleansing as our presence washes over the phenomenal self are effective. How can we expect to succeed in our work within the circle of invocation in which we invoke the really large presences, which requires subtly the fineness far beyond what is required for the invocation of our own comparatively puny presences if we have no sensing experience to indicate when we successfully invoke ourselves? And I pass.
At first, we may have only a momentary non-phenomenal vision to indicate to ourselves the successful invocation of the presence of our presence into the present. In the Eastern tradition, this was called Satori. This vision, even though only momentary, is sufficient to indicate a successful invocation of presence, because only during the invocation of presence can the unveiled vision reveal itself. When we first begin to seriously use non-phenomenal vision as a definite indication of the successful invocation of presence, we notice that although the vision can come easily to us the very first time, it was difficult, perhaps even impossible to attain again a second or a third or even a fourth time. And harder we try, the farther we seem to fall from this exalted state of grace until it seems impossible that we will ever achieve it again. So I have a question here. So does the invocation becomes harder as we go along? Because uh, I thought that invocation would probably become easier as you keep doing it more um, and get some more experience. I'm a little bit confused over here.
It's a paradox. Maybe I think if we read some more, the explanation will come by reading book.
Hmm.
Say that again, Bernie.
I think this is the usual paradox of these things, and if we continue reading a little more, it will explain itself.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I'll continue reading. This phenomena is common in any new acquired skill and is particularly noticeable in a new sexual encounter. A common reaction is to leave and then return, hoping that the first easy success will come again. And often it does, in the same way that a lover might be more exciting after a prolonged absence. But if we really understand how to work, we will not depend upon this artificial success, even though we may lose sight of the vision in our early efforts. If we know anything about real efforts, we will remember that with serious effort, our penetration of the veils will far surpass that of the lover who comes and goes periodically, enamored of instant benefits.
I would like
After
to
seven,
I would like to make a comment about this. In the paragraphs before, it talks about the subtle efforts, and I think that it's very common that when we first had some glimpses of the new world of whatever, another vision, we want to, like the drug addicts, no, want to we want to have it. Okay, once again, we tend to try to manipulate, like scientists that wants to make the experiment once again, so he can take, in a way, control of nature. I mean, this is analogy. So um, help me, David. There is a kind of saying that you don't push the doors of heaven, kind of. I think it is in that way that EJ is trying to show us It's not a kind. It's a special kind of effort, not the effort that we are accustomed to. More, 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 more. No?
Mm.
That is what I came to my mind.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Because it says, but if we really understand how to work, we will not depend upon this artificial success, even though we may lose sight of the vision in our early efforts. If we know anything about real efforts, we remember that with serious efforts, our penetration of the pills will far surpass that of the lover who comes and goes periodically, enamored of instant benefit. I think that is a better explanation than mine. Anyway,
Yeah, yeah, it does make sense to me because uh, anything that will give us instant reward is not going to help us in the long run in the work. And like any real effort will take some amount of time to show some results. I pass there.
Nick, in the world of science that you are, of course,
Mhm.
fond of and part of it, this usual scientist approach to phenomena is to make use of it, to control it, to break its secrets, so we can use it and benefit from it. That is one of the usual um, ways that science has developed, and I don't give it a bad name, but it's not the only way. Yes, at least the wise or the mystics or whatever, they they talk of an alternative of that way of um, tracking the phenomena. No, so I think
Yes,
it has something to do with this that we are reading, because in the sexual arena also you can't push that harder. No, you had an ecstasy. I want it again, and that is not not viable,
yeah,
because it's the mind that wants to repeat and control the sensation. Uh, uh, it's a paradox that it eludes us, no? Because it's it's like you have felt the grace, and you I wanted to capture it and make it my own and then use it. No? That's the
hmm
usual way the machine or the human apes want to work with the phenomenon. No? That's it.
yes. Bernie, since
Okay.
you talk about the scientific community, like in 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 the scientific community, anytime you may propose a new theory or you have some new data or you're making some new discoveries, it's your job to present that theory to the rest of the world, and your peer needs to verify it. And their whole job is to make sure that they can contradict your theory or find ways or holes in your theory where what you say is not true anymore. So that's where we have this huge disparity, where in our work, anytime that we propose a new idea, it is very hard for someone else to uh, contradict it or prove it, since they don't have that experience. And uh, the experience that we deal is very subjective. So I think
Is
that's
it?
where,
Is it?
well, it seems to be.
But isn't it an experience that we are commonly talking about?
Yes.
So how subjective is it? Is there an objective element to these invocational experiences?
Yes, there is. Well, if you would argue that the invocation results to an objective experience, it removes a little bit of the subjectivity of the experience and takes you closer to what is. And I think for someone who, if I have a scientist who's trying to work on that, he needs to remove some of that subjectivity to be able to experience the invocation of presence.
How would you do that?
And well, you would need to work on yourself.
Well, I don't know what that means.
David, David.
So you're in a perfect position because individuals, you are in the scientific community, right?
Yeah.
You're in the scientific community, and science, after hundreds and hundreds of years, has a agreed upon methodology, right?
Yeah.
And it says something like gather data, test the data, and then possibly formulate a theory.
Hmm.
Why would this be any different?
Well, the main idea is that uh, the experiment can be repeated again with exactly the same observations.
Precisely.
That's the main idea.
And is that not what EJ is talking about in this chapter? What is it, the 10,000 deaths? You work on it over and over and over and over again till it's second nature, that it's the second wind phenomenon. You're gathering data when you get there, but you're also gathering data on what happens when you are there. See what I mean? Now, part of the weakness that we have is that we don't know we don't have very many words to describe it. In scientific data gathering, part of it is to have objective measures, right? The temperature went up, the voltage went down in very exact ways. What we lack is a universal language as to what we find when we do invoke presence. So is it possible to have such a language in such a way that it does not create subjectivity? Can you be in a position where you can say to your fellow voyager, you know that that person has invoked their presence? Is it possible to know that?
Well, you can sense it if
Ah,
you're present in the moment with them. You can
okay.
you can sense the presence being reciprocated back to you.
So your tool of measurement instead of a thermometer is something called the sensing mechanism.
Mhm. And I think this is where we diverge from the scientific community, because in the scientific community, the tools that we have to observe are the lowest uh, form of observation.
Well, that's not what the psychologists will tell you.
Well, they would definitely disagree.
They would disagree, but they gather data like, like the people that study, end of life phenomena. They're just reporting this person said this, and that's a common, sense of reporting. So they're trying to objectify it. They're not trying to say, they're not interpreting it. The guy just says, I saw white light. So in our, what I'm trying to say is it possible to have objective consideration, maybe just in ourselves? Do you know when you are have invoked your own presence? Or better yet, and maybe this is easier, I call it the retreat from untruth. Do you know when you're asleep? Okay. Sometimes that's easier for us at this level. I know, oh my God, here's all the sensations of being asleep. Here's the sensations of being awake.
Yes, for me, it is easier to find when I'm asleep
Then
because I
that's
have all these indicators.
then you work with that, right? That's what you work with.
Yes.
And what I call that, and I got this from somebody else, but I call that, you know what the untruth is or the sleep, so you can gradually retreat from untruth. So I guess I'm saying that it's just as it's just as objective as the scientists. The problem is that we don't have proper language, maybe, and we probably at this point may not have objective neurological tools. But these neurologists are sitting there studying these profound meditators, right? And there's neurological differences. And so they're taking that as objective evidence. That person is awake, or whatever term they want to use.
Yeah.
The quiet traits that I think I shared in past encounters. One of the lines says, that line that you are saying, he who does not know, but he knows that he does not know, he needs to learn, teach him. It's like knowing that you don't know is some kind of knowledge, at least, or kind of
Yeah,
awakening.
it is definitely knowledge.
Yes, that's important. Anyway, it's no, I don't like much the word, but the paradox, no. Yes, we don't have the words or the concepts of this subtle phenomenon, because words tend to limit our knowledge or our feelings in a way, no? But that is
Yes.
what we have, no? What we have, and And I don't think that we are talking against science here, of course. We are talking about the limitations of science as we as we know now that has some limitations. But well, it's a uh, great, a very good force. I mean, no, anyway. But
Sure.
it has some limitations for for a phenomenon that are not the mm, natural, we could say, that are from this world, no? Uh, words. Anyway.
Well, I think the real challenge in this is that we are the instruments, and uh, how much do we trust the readings and the observations from the instrument? And that's where the huge disparity between subjectivity and objectivity lies. How much can you trust yourself?
Why don't you keep reading because we're getting kind of closer to the end of the chapter.
All right. Uh, After several months or even years of practice, the vision may return in varying periods of several minutes at a time. This, in the Eastern tradition, was called dhyana. Perhaps years later, the original state will be re-achieved and surpassed far beyond the first easy glimpse. When the non-phenomenal vision becomes continuous with the continuous invocation of presence, the possibility exists for the very first time of becoming a serious candidate for the work. In the Eastern tradition, this continuous state of presence and its corresponding non-phenomenal vision were called samadhi, meaning the undifferentiated, unveiled vision of the world. This unveiled vision in which everything blends into a flat patchwork quilt of light and dark, color and form, without individual significance, and particularly without the dimension of depth, separation of forms and objects, and the illusion of perspective is usually misunderstood as an out of body experience, but is really just the unveiled vision of creation. Eventually, although it may take a very long time before one attains permanent presence and the corresponding unveiled vision, one is able to adjust to this vision while still performing activities of the machine, taking responsibility for them, recognizing the objective unreality and at the same time the subjective reality of the phenomenal vision and its invocational apparatus, appearing as ordinary objects, treating everything encountered with respect and care as if they represented something in the unveiled vision, as in fact they do in aphasia. Nishant is driving right now, so either
So,
of you, Bernie or
I
Swati, can go ahead.
I can read.
actually, Ketav is with me,
Okay.
and he has some comments. So,
Oh no,
Yeah.
I just had a question. Just had a question. What would be the objective experience or definition the of the invocation of presence?
Say it again. What is the objective? What?
What would be an objective definition
Ah,
of the invocation of presence?
geez. Nishant, you're going to have to help us out here. What's the answer?
Yeah, he was asking me, so he's joining. He's actually visiting because Rajan is here, so he's also,
Welcome. Welcome.
So I just joined. I said, we do these readings. So he was listening to us, and then he said, "What? How does EJ define the invocation of presence
Objectively.
objectively?" So I said, I'll put it in the group. See what.
Well, this question has been asked many times within the groups. It's not a simple question to answer without a particular background. For instance, at this level, like in a particular commentary is, like we were saying a couple of minutes ago, the machine is asleep. Do you have a sense of what that means?
Yes, I've read the human biological machine with
Very good.
Ivan and EJ. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know what it means. The machine is asleep. So if the machine is asleep, what it means is kind of like a twist. It means it's in control. Okay.
Yeah.
Even though it actually doesn't matter in a certain way. What matters is our identification with the machine. If we are identified with this machine, like if I'm identified, I am David, right? Then then I can't tell really if it's asleep or awake. It doesn't even matter. It's just I am David.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you could sense that it was asleep? And a great deal of HBM in the first few chapters is developing knowledge. Do you remember we had a lot of work that we did on gathering the different types of data? Hearsay data, circumstantial data, and direct data, direct knowledge of the sleep of the machine. So then if you can see it operating and it's in control, first of all, and if you go back a few pages in this book to that little paragraph about the Holy Ghost, which is kind of grace, what is observing that? How do you know that? Let's say that you walk into the bank, and every second you walk into the bank, you get nervous, you get frightened. I don't want to make a mistake. And your whole body starts to contort. That's a little bit of an evidence of, if you can do it in real time, it's called direct evidence. The machine is responding to some horrible past thing. So if you start to have a good sense of what, let's just use the word it feels like, but I'm using the word feels in terms of sensing mechanism. If it feels like it's asleep, it has what I call a vibratory signature.
Mm-hmm.
When we awaken the machine, it's kind of weird words, because when we awaken the machine, basically we're diminishing the power of its power. It starts to become a servant of transformation rather than the thing itself. So if you can begin to have a sense of the vibratory sensation when the machine is awake, you're beginning to get a sense of the objective nature of, the presence of the presence in the present. You and you can, oh, there it is. Oh, I remember. Yeah, there it is. So I would say a good way to proceed would be to say, what is the vibratory sensation is fundamentally different from the sleeping machine to the awakened presence.
Got it. So we're defining the awakened state as against the sleeping state. We're defining the awakened state as
Yeah,
a state which will have some sort of presence, which of course gradually these keep on increasing as that gets more established, but some
sure.
sort of presence which is observing the machine and then
Yeah.
eventually also gets the will to develops the will to be able to.
Okay, well, slow yourself down a little bit there. So,
Mm-hmm,
what is observing the machine?
mm-hmm,
Okay, that's the sense of attention is observing the machine. When the machine is observed,
mm-hmm.
that's a vibratory sensation. And in the later work, like with the ABD, that's called a cleansing radiation.
Okay.
Okay. So when you are in the throes of a machine sleeping adventure,
Mm-hmm.
you can't, I mean, you can, but you can go to a different sleeping state called, I'm going to suppress this. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just another sleep. And now
Yeah.
people outside don't think that you're a machine, but you are.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's stepping outside of the realm,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the beginning of attention.
Mm-hmm.
In that world is the different world of the awakened individuals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that makes sense. There's a separate you've stepped out of the machine, right? You're not suppressing the machine, and this presence is what is observing the machine, correct? Yeah. उधर करो पैर में ना.
Well, an enormous breakthrough, in my opinion, of EJ's material is the discernment that we are two different electrical bodies.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
a machine and
Yeah.
a essential self.
Yeah.
And actually, if you actually read the Gita a bit, and actually some of the readings I'm doing right now on the Vivekananda's 4 yogas, it's
Mm-hmm.
there actually is that same. He isn't able to come up with a concept of there are two, that he's
Mm-hmm.
discerning between the sleep of the warrior, Maya, or whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it, and then the eternal divine body.
Yeah.
But we can't stand in the divine body, can we? Just ask Arjuna, how you doing, buddy? And Krishna says to him, you can't handle it. I want to know
Yeah.
the truth. You can't handle the truth.
Yeah. Take me back to the original state. Yeah.
Well, and the reason we can't handle it is
Hmm.
because the ego of the machine,
Hmm.
which becomes our helper, says, hey, you wanted me to help you survive.
Hmm.
You hired me on to help survive in this weird world here. I did a pretty damn good job because here you are.
Yeah.
Now you're abandoning me?
Huh.
Boo. and you thank the machine, you're grateful for the machine assisting you to get to the place that you can read this paragraph. Okay?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
So
then
there's
gradually the essential self, so the essential self is very like way down here, okay? Here's the machine, the power of the machine.
yeah.
Gradually, the essential self starts to, I don't want to use the word awaken, but it's kind of awaken. It's like it starts to remember itself.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's like this. The machine doesn't go away. As long as you have a
Yeah.
body, I'm sorry, buddy.
Yeah.
As long as you have a body, you got to carry that bad boy around. That's okay.
But its will starts getting less powerful.
It gets less powerful because you pay attention.
Yeah.
You get your checkbook. Here's my checkbook, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I guess you can't see it with that
Yes.
background.
yeah.
But I got here's
Just
my
like the phenomenal
checkbook.
vision, David. Just like the non-phenomenal vision.
And I need to write a check.
Yeah.
If I want to get to the next level, I got to write a check. And EJ is telling us in all his literature here, here's how you write the check, big boy.
Mm.
Right?
Absolutely. The journey that you just mentioned beautifully about essence slowly going up, right? With your two hands. There's a wonderful equivalence of this that is mentioned in Yoga Sutra, another scripture, right? Which says that it starts off as the drashta, which can just throw attention, but eventually that drashta graduates to become Ishwar, or Ishwar meaning Ish coming from the word control, or someone who has some will over the other. So that slowly.
Can anybody type that into the chat? Because I can't. I'd like to.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're probably driving, so you can't do that. But
oh, Nishant is driving, so I'm just the passenger.
Good for you. Yeah, he's basically is a chauffeur, so
Yeah.
that's good. Ishwar, thank you.
So you start with the drashta, and then it slowly graduates to Ishwar. And then there is various levels of Ishwar that are given. I think there's Purush, there is different types, levels that you progress as you move from the first sutra to the last sutra.
This will help me very much. Thank you, because I'm in a class on Tuesdays tomorrow with a bunch of Kundalini yoga experts, and trying to take me through the Vivekananda, his book of the four yogas. And
Interesting.
This will help me though. Thank you. Yeah, it's very interesting. Because truly, I should be able to find, it should be commonality of principles, the language difference.
Exactly, and that's what you mentioned at the beginning. There is objectivity in this. It's not fully subjective. Right? People who've undergone this journey, they've experienced the same thing. They would use a different language to express it, but it's the same journey.
When you look at these, like I do a bunch of work with these Tibetan Buddhists, it's actually secular work, but anyway, and I know that they can sense my presence in a different way. Okay. They have an objective ability to read. And so, Nikhil, it's like we don't have that a piece of equipment properly, right? But if three highly experienced meditators say the same thing, isn't that some form of data?
Definitely. And especially if they agree with each other.
That's what I'm saying. They agree on the data that they're noticing. So we are seekers after the truth, everybody. So your job, and Nikhil is recording this for the universe, is to gather enough data so that you can help others find the path and see the path. Okay?
David,
Thanks, David.
Bernie.
yes, I would, I would like, I don't have it here, but probably you know more wiser people from the last 1,000 years, maybe. They developed a kind of story or whatever that is very classic and very popular. I think it's called the carriage. That is the the horse, the cart, the driver, and the observer, and it's a very helpful picture to understand the work of the observer and the possibility the observer in time becomes master. You know what I'm talking about, that story of the horse, the cart, the driver.
Yeah. And the term that is used, don't put the cart before the horse. That's and that's how it's interpreted in English, but makes sense, right?
Yeah.
I tried to look for it for the next session, and I will bring it because it's a very powerful way of seeing the work of that we are trying to do to awaken. Because the driver, the horse is of course the animal we have that is it's an animal, it's
Sure.
an ape, and the driver is drunk. It's our emotional. It's very powerful, but it's drunk, so it doesn't know where he's going. So the observer is trying to see the situation of also of the carriage that is carriage is our body that has its needs, and that kind of equation is very interesting to have in mind, I think. So
Yeah.
I will I will look for it and I will try to send it for the next meeting because I think it's very instrumental in a way to see the action of the forces. No, that's
You
it.
might find it in the Gurdjieffian material. He
Yes,
likes this work a lot, that commentary.
yes,
Gurdjieff, yeah.
yes.
Thank you, Bernie. Well, now that we've pretty much solved everything, huh, Nick?
Okay,
Nikhil?
looks like we have just one page to read next week.
Okay.
Did we? Uh-oh.
Seems like it.
Okay, anybody wants to read this?
We're about out of time, and this
Okay.
the last pages are worth focusing on. Okay. So rather than rush through it, maybe we read those last bits next week and starting with even though individuals.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. Okay,
Okay.
then. Bernie's trying to show something. I thought he was.
All right, looks like we are live on YouTube.
Oh, okay. I don't have.
Yeah, that will be useful, Nikhil. Thank Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Bernie's trying to show something here.
You have to take the back off.
And you're muted, Bernie, so we can't hear you as well.
Trying to take the back off. So let's see if I can show it at least for. Oh, sorry. No. Trying. None. Yes. None. 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 No. Yes. None. Okay. Let's see if you can see what I'm trying to show you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see the horse, the cart, the driver, and the observer is trying to make something of all this. Okay, it's a classic picture. You can find it in many places. That's it.
Thank
What
you.
book is that, Bernie? Self-completion?
Yes, in the self-completion, that is my reference for these days. I am very fond of that. The horse is the emotions, the carriage is the body, the driver is the intellect, and the master and is the observer, and first is the observer, can become the higher self or master eventually. And this drawing is you can find it, the conveyance is transport, no? The conveyance, I think it's a kind of French word. So that's I find it.
Thank you. That's good.
Great.
Yeah, let's pursue that, and everybody can find it on their own. And Nikhil, do you want to stop recording?
Mm-hmm.
And then can you stay on just 1 minute? I got one